Hey event photographers, today we're going to talk about the 135mm lens. It is possibly my favorite lens, but I don't really love any of my gear. They're tools, but if I were to choose a lens that I really do love, that I feel like offers me something special my other lenses don't, I would say it is my 135mm f2 lens. I first got this lens almost on a whim. I wouldn't do things the same way I did it when I was building my business, because I didn't really follow my own advice, because I did not have a mentor like me to tell me what to get. I've said on my channel repeatedly that I think a 24-70 is the first lens you should get if you can afford it. Who cares if it's f4 or f2.8? Then after that, a 70-200 would then cover everything. And you don't need to buy like a 135. You don't need to buy an 85mm lens if you're strictly shooting events. I believe this may have been like my third lens I picked up, and it was almost on a whim. It was one of these photography shows at Staples Center in Los Angeles, and they were waiving the tax, and I'm like, oh, forget it, I'm getting it. And I think it was about $1,000. I bought it for more or less $1,000, no tax. I think it still goes for a similar amount today. I do not really regret this purchase. Is it necessary? No. But is it fun? And do I enjoy using it 100%? And I'm going to talk about kind of what I see as so wonderful about this lens. So even when I have a 70-200 with me, I often pull out this lens at some point at an event. And I do that because I want to do more creative portraits, or I want to do a more creative look to my candids. I want that really ultimately blurred out background. Now, yes, there are similar lenses now that are at 1.8, and I think when Canon replaces this lens, there will be a 1.8 version. That will probably be on that RF mount, but without a doubt, I think you'll have a 1.8, and maybe they'll surprise us. Maybe we'll get like a 1.4, who knows. So the thing about this lens is that it's not just more shallow. f2 to 2.8 is surprisingly a big deal, and f2 at 135mm is incredibly shallow without a doubt. But it has a certain character to it. I especially like using this lens for two reasons. One, that kind of blue hour light. I love shooting blue hour available light, and going from 2.8 to 2 lets me do that without raising my ISO, and it creates a golden, like a glow to it. And it gets very subjective, it's hard to explain, but it has sort of like a glow to the image due to the character of the lens. Another time I really like using this lens is more and more I've been experimenting for honestly like 8 years. I've been experimenting with light, but more and more what I've been attempting to do is make my strobe really blend in with the ambient light. And that should always be your goal, but I'm always trying to push it. How can I make my strobe lighting blend in with my ambient light? And one way I do that is I'm really using the strobe not to light my subject, but to give a more flattering light on my subject. So what I'll do is I dial in settings that give me a nice ambient light, and then I will add strobe to it. Now, if you use a strobe on the camera and you are using it especially with a filter and you're just going straight on, that will always look kind of artificial and evenly lit in a negative way. What I like to do is always bounce off a surface if I can, because it gives direction to my light. It also can kind of cascade some light on the ambient environment as well. And when I'm shooting at f2, I'm able to do that without making my flash work too hard. Hope that makes sense. Another time I will use this lens will be for fun, honestly. having to move in, zoom in and out with your feet because this lens does not zoom can be a lot of fun. I feel more engaged with my craft. It's kind of like the experience of, I drive a stick shift car. Actually, both of my cars are stick shift, not because it's superior. You'll go 0 to 60 nowadays with an automatic faster. But I enjoy controlling the car. I enjoy the process of being engaged with my vehicle. And when I'm shooting with the Prime, I feel more engaged with my photography. Another time I really prefer this lens is for portraits over my 85. I like the 85mm focal length a lot, but I never invested in anything faster than the 85mm 1.8. And this lens renders color so much better than the 85. In my experience, that could be a copy thing. You guys know my channel. I don't talk about gear. I talk about photography. And so you're not going to see me compare the two side by side, but I have shot jobs in which I'm doing, for example, a lot of professional portraits with studio lights, and I use both depending on mood or whatever it calls for, like the person. I'm not going to get into it, but there's different reasons I might shoot with the 135 over an 85, and I've noticed that the color is just much better from the 135. Another thing I really like about this lens is that it's really light. I mean, it's not light, it's a pretty heavy lens, but relative to like a 70 to 200, I'm able to just move through crowds a lot easier using it. I don't have to worry about hitting people. I can kind of discreetly get over a person's shoulder and photograph that way. Shooting at f2, I'm able to really shoot through things and blur them out more, giving it a very ethereal look, or really eliminating distractions. I really love the lens for that. Let's talk about what I don't like about the lens. There's really only one thing. While it does focus pretty fast, this is an ancient lens by modern standards. I didn't prep by looking up the date it came out, but it came out, I think, like late 90s, maybe early 2000s, but I think late 90s. Someone's already mentioning it in the comments. Thank you, but it came out a long time ago, and it's not the fastest to focus, and it definitely doesn't compete with the 70 to 200. So if you're doing sports, that kind of thing, it's not going to be your ideal lens. But if you're shooting kind of in not continuous autofocus, but maybe single autofocus, possibly continuous, but you're really just looking for the peak of action and you don't need to worry about tracking and all that, I think this is a great lens for that. So that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Would I recommend getting this lens? Yes, only after you've gotten your essentials. If money's tight, if you're just trying to build a business right now, don't worry about getting this lens. Don't go online and look at photographers you wish you were and say, well, what are they using? And then get the gear they're using. They're good photographers, most likely. Learn the craft. You don't need... Some lenses you do need. Let's be real. Like... You can fake shallow depth of field to a degree, but it's not going to be quite the same. But sometimes your gear is prohibitive and you can't do something you could do with a different piece of equipment. But often it's just your eye, and focus on getting better as a photographer rather than picking up new pieces of equipment. All right, thanks guys.